All right, we're at Texas Motor Speedway this weekend, race number 34 of 36 for the 2018 season. And this is actually shaping up to be a pretty interesting slate as far as DraftKings goes. We got Ryan Blaney on the pole, but Kevin Harvick starting third, Kyle Busch starting 10th. 4 in the 18 looked great in practice on Saturday. Blaney didn't. However, we talked about this a couple weeks ago at Kansas, looking at the mile-and-a-half tracks and how the pole sitters have fared. With Logano's performance at Kansas, that average went down to 9.2 as far as finish for the pole sitter on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. They're averaging about 70 DraftKings points per race with a little under 87 laps led and a little over 42 fastest laps per race. Flipping over to Texas specifically, looking at the last 8 here, pole sitters haven't fared quite as well, averaging a finish of 13.1, just 54.6 DraftKings points per race. However, they're right there with laps led, 83.6 laps led per race, a little bit under there with fastest laps, 29.9. One thing to note this week is that, Texas was repaved before the 2017 races, so the last 3 are pretty much have been on the new track. So that is one thing to consider, as well as over the last 6 Texas races overall, so 3 on the new track, 3 on the old, only 1 winner has came from the top 5 starting position. So this is a long race on Sunday, comparatively speaking, to about mile-and-a-halfs. Got 500 miles, 334 laps, which means there's a little bit more fastest laps than usual for a mile-and-a-half track. Obviously, more points for laps led. Pit window right there between 56 and 62 laps. It'll be interesting to see whether we see any strategy at all, or whether teams are going to play it relatively safe. Right now, there's 4 cars on the outside looking in as far as getting to Homestead and challenging for that championship, and 25 or more points, you're looking at almost a must-win situation. Not to say that Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Truex can't have issues here on Sunday, but how likely is that at a mile-and-a-half track? Not very. They have been the best on them this season, so really you're just hoping for something fluke. As far as Texas goes, we don't really see one dominator very much, simply because of how long the race is. More like 1 or 2 dominators, and we still see 3 or 4 drivers typically leading, I'd say, a significant amount of laps, more than 30. So you have to keep that in mind this weekend. Chances are it's not just going to be Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Blaney up there leading. I have those 3 projected as the most laps and an overwhelming majority, but still, I think there's the chance for other cars to get out there. And as far as fastest laps go, the leader sometimes has issues here with lapped cars and weaving in and out of them. So that opens the door for the guy running second or third to pick up those fastest laps, or even further back in the field. But the point here is the leader, the guy who leads the most laps, won't necessarily have the most fastest laps. You can almost compare it a little bit to Atlanta earlier this year, which Harvick dominated. Kyle Busch started on the pole. So if you want to go back and look at that, feel free. Obviously not the same exact kind of track, but both mile-and-a-halves, and both have I would say, abnormal fastest lap distribution during the race. Getting into the starting lineup here, as I said, we have Blaney on the pole. I'm interested this week to see how high he goes ownership-wise. He's very good here at Texas. In the first race here last season, he started second, led 148 laps, had 51 fastest laps, ended up finishing outside the top 10. I forget what happened there, but definitely had the best car through the first half of the race. This weekend, he's starting first, but the 12 car did not look great during the practice sessions on Saturday. So pair that with the fact that Harvick and Kyle Busch are the two highest priced drivers this week, also the most likely dominators, and I honestly think Blaney could go lower owned than usual for a pole sitter. But still, as we said before, pole sitters are averaging almost 90 laps led per race on mile and a half tracks this season. So I definitely like having a good amount of Ryan Blaney on Sunday. Not even taking into account that he really likes this racetrack and always runs well here. He has the third best average finished here since the repave. What it's going to come down to is, can he dominate, and can he stay out of Harvick, in front of Harvick for the first, even if it's just for the first stage. That's going to be, I think, right around 80 laps. So you got Blaney starting first, Boyer starting second. How long is Blaney going to be able to, or is Boyer going to be able to stay in front of Harvick? I think that's going to be the big question. Another negative about Blaney this week, he has the worst average place differential compared to finishing on mile and a half, finish position on mile and a half tracks, minus 7.4 spots. So that just tells me that the team runs really well during the race, has some problems finishing. That's a big deal if it's a race where he's not getting dominator points, but obviously those dominator points can kind of offset that late race fade. I still look at Blaney as a top 5 play this weekend. I think he's going to end up being very good on Sunday. I think that team will make some changes overnight. Definitely a good play in DraftKings, I think. But I'm not going to go, super crazy. Like if Harvick was on the pole this week, I'd probably have like 75% Harvick. Blaney on the pole, I'm going to shoot for that 15 to 20% range, which is still a significant amount of lineups. As I said, I think it'll be interesting to see how high he goes overall, how high owned he goes overall. So if 15 to 20% is underweight, I'm okay with it. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But I am by no means not going with Blaney on Sunday. Clint Boyer, on the other hand, he starts second. He's priced at $9,300 in DraftKings this weekend. Really, him in qualifying and Stewart-Haas Racing just go together here at Texas. This is the third time he's qualified third or better at this track. He has yet to finish better than 9th, though. So as far as DraftKings goes, I don't plan on having any Blaney lineups or any lineups with Boyer in them. He's averaging just 6 fastest laps per race and 2 laps led per race on the mile and a half tracks this year. And since the repave here at Texas, he's averaging just under 5 fastest laps per race. Starting second, that's not going to get it done, especially with that price tag over $9,000. So definitely not a Boyer fan this week. I think he has top 10 potential, but that's not good enough in DraftKings. Kevin Harvick, as I said earlier, looks to be the car to beat. It's either going to be him or Kyle Busch. Got to give that a little bit of an edge to Harvick just because he's starting third. And he's been really good at Texas here since the repave. Over the last 3 races, he's led and had about 20% of the fastest laps. And, if you go back to the April race earlier this year, he had an 11-second lead at the end of the first stage. There was 5 laps to go. Truex hit the wall. But an 11-second lead, that is just enormous. As far as the mile and a half tracks go for 2018 overall, we've had 9 races. Harvick has led over 33% of all laps ran on them this season, has had nearly 20% of all the fastest laps on them. There's no reason to not have a significant amount of Kevin Harvick in your DraftKings lineups this weekend. I'm shooting for at least 50%, probably going to end up being more. Have to see how it all goes out. It's going to come down to him or Kyle Busch and what kind of strategy you want to play there. But I will have plenty of Harvick. I'd recommend you do as well. Another Stewart-Haas car that qualified top 5 was Aric Almirola. He's an interesting. I like him as an outside dominator this weekend. Maybe as a pivot off of Blaney. If you don't think Blaney is going to do very well from the pole, Almirola starts 4th, so it doesn't hurt as much when he falls back. And another thing you have to like about Almirola is just how this team is running in the playoffs. They're out there leading laps. They're contending for wins. If you go back to the Chicagoland race, Almirola put up 39.5 dominator points. As far as Texas goes, the first race here this season didn't go as well for Almirola. I forget, he had issues of some sort, but should be much better this time around. He still had 4 top 20s in the last 7 races here while he was with Richard Petty, so that's good. Usually good for about 5 to 10 fastest laps on mile-and-a-half tracks. Should be relatively low owned despite his mid-range price tag. As I said, I'm not that great at predicting ownership percentages, but I think Almirola is going to be, in that probably 10 or under range. I don't mind being a little overweight, going to maybe maximum 15%, maybe staying with the field at 10%. I wouldn't fully fade Almirola, but I'm not going to go crazy either. Keselowski, on the other hand, I really like the Keselowski play this week. He actually, if you pay attention to my DraftKings preview on Wednesday, my bargains and busts, he was my top bargain for the week. Kes priced at $9,500 is just not unbelievable, but very surprising. 5 of the last 8 Texas races, he's finished 6th or better. He likes this track. And what I really like about Keselowski this weekend is how he's performed on the mile-and-a-half tracks in the playoffs. 36 fastest laps and 75 laps led when he won in Las Vegas. 28 fastest laps and 26 laps led, and a 6th place finish at the second Kansas race a couple weeks ago. He's priced right, and his high qualifying position should tame his ownership pretty much. So I like being slightly overweight on Keselowski. I think he fits in well in lineups with that $9,500 price tag. So I like being, maybe in that 15 to 20% range, depending on how it all plays out. We do have Chase Elliott there at 9,700, so that might make it a little bit difficult because I do really like Chase Elliott this weekend. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but still, Keselowski overall, I think he's going to have a good race on Sunday. I think he can get out front and lead some laps. Obviously, those Penske cars have very good speed. Obviously, Blaney has the track position to start the race, but 5th place isn't bad for Keselowski, especially with his $9,500 price tag. Another interesting play this week is Denny Hamlin starting 6th. He's actually underpriced for where DraftKings usually has him. Priced at $9,100 this week. He does have 3 top 5s in the 9 mile-and-a-half track races this year. So I think there's potential for him to finish top 5. He also ran 3rd here at Texas last fall. He led 65 laps. I think Hamlin's going to be pretty low owned because of his starting position. What it's going to come down to is whether he can put up enough fastest laps to get him in that winning lineup, because I think that's what it's going to take. A top 5 finish isn't going to put Hamlin in that lineup because there's no place differential there. So from a DraftKings perspective, from an overall fantasy NASCAR perspective, I think Hamlin is a decent maybe off-sequence play this week. He should be low-owned in pretty much all formats, DraftKings included. But I won't be going crazy on him by any means. Maybe have a few off-sequence, for lack of a better term, lineups with Hamlin in it. But just starts a little too high and doesn't have that race-winning potential. Kurt Busch is another guy, starts too high. He's had 0 top 5s here at Texas since 2010. I do think that he might be able to challenge for a finish that high this weekend, but is a 5th place finish plus 2 place differential points worth that $8,900 price tag, especially when you have Blaney at 8,700, Johnson at 8,500, Erik Jones there, I think, at 8,300. All should have more DraftKings points than Kurt Busch on Sunday. So it's hard to even call him a pivot play because it's going to take 3 other guys having issues for Kurt Busch to be the correct choice in that price range. So as far as other mile-and-a-half tracks this year, Kurt has ran very well. He has an average running position of 8.9 on the mile-and-a-halfs this year, average finish of 14.2. It's kind of like Ryan Blaney. Kurt is second worst in that category, comparing average running position to average finish. So if he fits into a lineup, it's worth a shot if we have one dominator. If Harvick goes out and leads 300-plus laps like Keselowski did a few years ago here at Texas, Kurt Busch could end up being in that lineup. But even then, it's going to come down to probably place differential with guys like Larson and Truex. So not going to have much Kurt Busch this weekend. Don't see it working out. As far as the guy starting beside him, Joey Logano, I like the Penske cars this weekend. I think Logano will go very under-owned, so I like being in that, maybe 10 to 15% range for Logano. What I really like about Logano, just like Keselowski, is how he's performed at the mile-and-a-half tracks in the playoffs. 38 fastest laps, most recently at Kansas 2, 13 fastest laps at Las Vegas 2. He led 100 laps at Kansas and 46 laps at Vegas. So if he can get to the front here this weekend at Texas, I think Logano can put up a decent amount of dominator points. He probably should have qualified. I don't want to say he should have qualified on the front row, but it wouldn't have surprised me. Remember, in qualifying on Friday, Logano ditched his lap at the start of the final round because I think he missed turn 1. So that's the reason he qualified 8th. He had a better car than that on Friday. Should have a better car than that on Sunday. He's finished 7th or better in the last 5 Texas races. He has top 5 finishes in 7 of the last 11 races here at Texas. So definitely like Logano as a nice play there at 10,500 if you want to go against what should be significantly higher percentage owned drivers of Truex and Larson. Maybe if you can fit Logano, Truex, or Larson plus Blaney on there, and maybe that'll work out. Where Blaney and Logano are the dominators. That's where I could see Logano working out. It's going to be difficult though to get him in a lineup with Harvick and also trying to fit in those place differential guys. So overall, I like being overweight on Logano. I think it's just going to be tough. So, 10 to 15% is where I'm at with Logano. William Byron, moving on here. William Byron starts 9th. He was my bust of the week if you read my preview. Even at $5,800, he is averaging 10.3 DraftKings points per race on the mile-and-a-half tracks. And that includes, he finished 10th here at Texas back in April after starting 33rd. So that's a huge day. Pretty sure he was in the winning lineup that day. If not, I'd be surprised. But still, even with that huge day, he's averaging just over 10 DraftKings points per race on this track type. So now you got a really cheap guy starting inside the top 10 that has an average finish of 26.9 on this track type in 2018. Yeah, the 24 showed a little bit of speed this weekend, but even a 15th place finish is going to get you 23 base DraftKings points. So just looking at guys similar in Byron's price range, you got Michael McDowell at 5,500. He's going to get you those same 23 DraftKings points with a 25th place finish. So I like fully fading William Byron. That team has had the most bad luck as of late and this whole season. Starts too high. Don't fall for the cheap price tag. There are much better options, even lower prices than that. Definitely not a William Byron fan this weekend, especially with it being a 500-mile race. That's just longer for his team to screw up. Kyle Busch rounds out the top 10. As I said before, one of the best, if not the best car heading into Sunday. It's between him and Harvick. As far as my projections this weekend, it's those two and then everybody else. I got Harvick projected at 98.2 DraftKings points for Sunday on average. Kyle Busch at 92.9. 98.2 for Harvick, 92.9 for Kyle Busch. Then I got Truex next at 69.8. Nice DraftKings points. So huge gap there. As I said with Harvick, I think it's going to will it come down to somehow fitting both of those guys into the same lineup? They're the two, Harvick and Kyle Busch are the two highest priced guys this weekend. Side by side, like Harvick, and here's why. Last 2.5 tracks races in the playoffs, Kyle Busch has a total of 26 fastest laps and one lap led. Not great. Looking over the whole 2018 season, though, Kyle is averaging 39 fastest laps per race, just over 64 laps led per race on these 1.5 miles. So do you go by recent or overall season? For a lot of guys, I am looking at the recent races simply because the majority of the 1.5 miles this year have or took place, May or earlier. Kyle Busch, though, has been so good on this track type this year, it's hard to overlook that. It's also hard to overlook the fact that in the April race here at Texas, he won, led 116 laps, and had 70 fastest laps. So Kyle Busch, ownership-wise, it's hard to tell where he's going to be. Strategy-wise, I think I like Kyle Busch, definitely like Kyle Busch as a play. I think Harvick's going to be higher owned than Kyle Busch. So strategy-wise, I like flipping, like if you expect Harvick at 45, Kyle Busch at 35, flipping them. Kyle Busch does have more room for place differential, but as I said, I think Harvick's going to put up the most dominator points. I don't see either of these guys running into issues on Sunday. These teams are at the top of their game right now. Neither of them are locked into Homestead yet, so I think it's going to be these two battling for the win. Should also be the two dominators. You can't go wrong with either of them. It's just going to depend how the race plays out and what the optimal lineup ends up being, whether it's both of those in one lineup or both Kyle Busch and Harvick in one lineup or a combination somewhere else. Paul Menard starts 11th. I like Paul Menard at 1.5 miles, so there's no reason not to. He runs really well at them this season. Looking at his average finish on the 1.5 mile tracks in 2018, 13th best in the series at 15.8, average running position of 16.6. That goes down to 15th best. So what it comes down to is he's priced at $7,900, qualified 11th. Yes, we've seen that 21 car have top 5 speed this year, but at the same time, we've seen that team run into a lot of bad luck. So I don't like Paul Menard. I won't have much of him this weekend. I don't like him just because of his price. As far as, potential for a top 5 finish, I like that. Just he's not going to fit into lineups well and more likely to disappoint on Sunday than exceed expectations. So pretty low owned for me on Menard. Erik Jones, on the other hand, he's been I've liked him like every week this year, it seems like. Some consider Texas his best track. He's finished 12th or better here in 3 or 4 starts, including the April race from earlier this year. He finished 4th, led 64 laps in that race. Noteworthy there, those are his only laps led on the 1.5 mile tracks this year. So what's going to come down to is the $8,300 price tag worth the place differential and finish? I could definitely see that 20 car ending up top 5 on Sunday. Jones has the 7th best average finish at 1.5 mile tracks this year at 11.8. If you're thinking of going Harvick and Kyle Busch in the same lineup, I like Jones there as a pivot off of Blaney, and definitely like being overweight on him overall through compared to the expected ownership of him with everybody else. So I like Jones there. As I said before, you got Blaney, Johnson, Jones, and Almirola in that price range, $8,700 to $8,100. I like being more overweight on Jones there than anybody else. Martin Truex Jr. qualified 13th this week. You'd think he'd be an automatic play in DraftKings. But like I said, this is a 500-mile race, 334 laps, so dominator points kind of are a little bit more important than a normal mile and a half track. And this weekend is kind of reminding me of Kansas a couple weeks ago, where Truex showed less than expected speed. He started 12th in that race, finished 5th. He had 3 fastest laps. That's it. No laps led, 3 fastest laps. This weekend, he's starting 13th. I think he'll finish. I'm projected finishing, average projected finish of 3.6. If he doesn't put up any Dominator points, though, is he worth that $11,100 price tag? I don't think so. I think he's a good cash game play, but not a great GPP play. So looking at that price range, I would rather go with someone like Logano, as we talked about before, or Larson, who starts further back and also has top 5 potential on Sunday. Truex, the thing about Truex is he's a safe pick, but safe doesn't equal great in DraftKings. Definitely wouldn't recommend completely fading him, but I don't mind being underweight on Truex this Sunday just because of his limited Dominator potential and his high price. So I don't mind being overweight on Truex, not significantly, but still underweight. Ryan Newman starts 14th. He's priced at $7,500. He has 1 top 10 in the 9 mile and a half tracks races this season. So he qualified high. He was priced decently high for who it is. I think Newman could finish top 15. But that's not what you need out of a price tag like that. If he was down in the $6,500 range, I'd consider using Newman as kind of an outside of the box play. But at $7,500, not liking Newman at all. Moving on to Trevor Bayne, though, who is priced at $6,600 this week. I don't mind having 5 to 10% Bayne here. Yeah, he qualified 15th, but both Roush Fenway Fords showed decent speed, decent overall average speed in both practice sessions on Saturday. They both ran a limited number of laps, so that could be why. But still, I think there's some speed there. Another thing to note about Bayne is that he's finished top 15 in the last 3 spring races here at Texas. So if he can maintain that 15th place starting spot, maybe there's attrition late in the race and he ends up top 10. That's great value for someone priced at $6,600. The major negative thing about Bayne, though, is looking at the last 6 fall races here at Texas. He's finished 28th, 30th, 39th, 39th, 29th, and 22nd. So not great numbers there. Like I said, I don't like having a ton of Bayne, but I don't mind that risky play right there. He should be able to stay on or close to the lead lap. And in that price range, he should be very low owned in DraftKings this weekend. So I like him as an outside of the box off sequence pick on Sunday. Chase Elliott starts 16th for the AAA Texas 500. He's priced well at $9,700. Don't forget, this guy won the last mile and a half track race that we've had. He's also really good here at Texas. He's never finished worse than 11th at this track. Has an average finish of 7.4 here over his 5 career starts, and he's led in 4 of his 5 career starts. It's never been more than 4 laps, but he knows how to get to the front. I think Elliott is going to be relatively, for what he should be anyway, under-owned on Sunday because that car hasn't looked good since they took it off the truck. This isn't an impound race, though, so the team can make changes, and it's worth noting that pretty much the entire season, Elliott hasn't been a great qualifier, and the 9 car has looked worse in practice than it has in the race. So at $9,700, I like being pretty overweight on Chase Elliott. I wouldn't mind having 30%, maybe more of him on Sunday at that $9,700 price range because I think he can challenge for a top 5. This 9 car's had single-digit finishes in 11 of the last 14 Cup Series races overall. That doesn't happen by luck. The exceptions were Talladega, Las Vegas, where he wrecked, and then he finished 15th at Indianapolis. So as far as fitting into lineups, I think that price point works very well with Elliott, and he should, like I said, he should be low owned. So definitely like having plenty of Chase Elliott this weekend, even with those disappointing practice times on Saturday. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starts 17th. As I touched on before, the Roush Fenway Fords look pretty good. It also doesn't hurt that Stenhouse has finished 16th or better here at Texas in 4 of the last 5 races. Top 3 in overall average speed in both sessions on Saturday. Didn't run a ton of laps, but still the speed's there. Not to mention Stenhouse finished 10th at Charlotte this year, 11th at Kansas, and 14th at Vegas. Is a top 10 enough, though, to get Stenhouse in the winning lineup? He starts 17th. He's priced at $7,000. I wish he was priced just a little bit lower. I'd like him even more. But I don't mind using Stenhouse, being a little different, praying he doesn't hit the wall. I don't mind having a decent amount of Stenhouse on Sunday. This is a relatively safe track for him. That's difficult to say. Relatively safe track for him. And this team has shown that they can challenge for a top 10 on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. So starting 17th should be low owned, plus adding in the decently high salary. Stenhouse, I like being overweight on him. Alex Bowman starts 18th, priced at $7,600. A little too high for me. He wrecked. There was an early wreck here back in April. He finished 28th. He was involved in that wreck. I think he has the potential to move up, but not significantly. I can't see the 88 finishing top 10 on Sunday. So I won't have much, if any, of Bowman. Same with Daniel Suarez. Price a little too high. You got to wonder what that 19 team is doing. He's not going to be in that car next year. So are they going to be in full-fledged test mode? I don't know. So just like Bowman, very low owned for me as far as Suarez goes, if I have any of him at all. Jamie McMurray is rounding out the top 20 as far as qualifiers go. If you paid attention to my Twitter earlier this week, I kind of reevaluated Martinsville and how I was off as much as I was. And my pre-practice algorithm is how I lean on it heavily for the handicap points for the Showcase, which is a game on my site, as well as Slingshot Fantasy Auto Contest. Salaries for that are based a lot on my pre-practice algorithm. It loved Joey Logano last week, and I don't know, I whiffed. I didn't pay attention to it. This week, it loves Jamie McMurray a lot more than usual. It had him ranked 14th. So not to overreact to completely missing it last week, but I think I need to start paying a little bit more attention to that and not, just looking at the weekend as a whole. So Jamie McMurray starts 20th, priced at $7,100. It's a little high, but at the same time, he's finished 13th or better in 6 of the last 8 Texas races. I don't mind being overweight on McMurray Sunday. He has an average finish of 19.6 on the mile-and-a-half tracks this year, though, so that's hard to make a great case for him. Didn't look looking up practice number 2 from Saturday. McMurray was 23rd on the speed chart, 12th in 10-lap average. Happy hour, he jumped up to 13th fastest and down in 22nd on 10-lap average. Went a little bit later in the session, but about half the cars did there. So I don't know. It'll depend how your lineup fit and how that $7,100 price tag fits. But I think McMurray has top 15 potential. I don't mind being somewhat overweight on him. I don't think he's going to go very high owned on Sunday. But I'm looking at being at that maybe 10% range, if that tells you anything. Chris Buescher qualified 21st. I don't hate the Chris Buescher play. I just think he's priced a little too high. If he was in that mid $5,000 range, which is where he's been at for a lot of the season, I'd like him even more. He's never finished worse than 22nd here at Texas. He's in the last 4 races at least. Once again, though, is he worth the price for just finish points? He qualified 21st. If he finishes 20th, you're looking at 22 base points with place differential and finish there. Is that worth $6,200? As I've alluded to earlier, there's some very good value plays down under 6,000. So that makes it a lot more difficult to be really high on someone like Chris Buescher. One thing I will say, though, Buescher ended up 15th here at Texas back in April. He ended up 16th at Kansas and 15th at Vegas, the two most recent mile-and-a-half tracks. So once again, I don't mind being overweight on Buescher. It's just hard because of his 21st place starting spot and banking on him for hopefully a top 15 finish. I'm looking to be maximum maybe 12 to 15% max, and that's about it. It's just those lower price guys are looking a lot better heading in to Sunday as far as the price savings and minimal drop off as far as points. Kyle Larson qualified 22nd. The thing about Larson, his record here at Texas looks awful. He does have a second place finish here in 2017, but the last two races have not been good. It's worth noting, though, he was running in the top 5 in both of those races before he had issues. So as far as this weekend goes, looking at my projections here for Sunday's race, I have Truex projected at an average finish of 3.6. He's starting 13th, and I have him projected at about 69.8 points. Larson, starting 22nd, I have him average projected finish at 7.4 and average DraftKings points of 66. So that tells me with more room to move up, especially not only from starting spot, but my projected average finish, I would rather go with Larson, take that $1,100 savings as far as salary goes, use it somewhere else, and roll the dice with Larson as opposed to, as I said before, the pretty much guaranteed near or if top or actual top 5 finish with Truex. What's going to come down to is where are these ownership percentage going to end up? You know, if Harvick and Kyle Busch are both significantly owned, it's not very likely that Larson and Truex are going to be as high owned as one would expect, especially starting this far back. So because of that, I like having, you know, if 30% Larson puts me overweight on him Sunday, great, because starting 22nd and he has legitimate top 5 potential. Not to mention he ranks 3rd in percent of fastest laps on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. He has 8.6 and 4th in average finish at 8.3. So Larson, as long as he can stay out of trouble on Sunday, I think he definitely has a car that can run top 5. Probably can't compete with Truex or Kyle Busch and Harvick. But at the same time, this is a long race. Adjustments can be made. Mistakes can be made on pit road. Harvick's crew. Love the Larson play, both in cash games and GPPs when it comes to DraftKings. There have been plenty of weeks in DraftKings this year that I've lost money, and not to put blame on anybody, but it's mainly been due to Jimmie Johnson, so it's hard for me to really like him. As far as this weekend goes, there's that potential there because he qualified 23rd. He's good at Texas. What I've seen this weekend, the 48 car probably has top 15 speed, maybe. He's also in that price range with Erik Jones and Ryan Blaney, and the chances of both of those guys having issues on Sunday aren't very likely. So I like both of those over Johnson this weekend, as well as the fact that he has an average finish of 18.9. Johnson does on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. How high owned is he going to be at the $8,500 price tag? I'm not sure, but I don't plan on having a lot of Johnson. Just didn't see the speed out of that car this weekend, and I think it'll be more luck than anything for Jimmy to finish top 10 on Sunday. So don't mind being underweight or just relative low ownership on Jimmie Johnson on Sunday. Ty Dillon starts 24th. I mentioned Michael McDowell a couple times. He's at 5,500 this weekend. Ty Dillon's at 5,600. I don't mind Ty as a pivot off of McDowell. He's finished 13th. He's finished between 13th and 24th in his 4 starts here at Texas Motor Speedway. My biggest concern, though, with Ty Dillon, in addition to qualifying top 25, is that this team just hasn't finished well at mile-and-a-half tracks this year. The 26.4 average finish, average of 18.4 DraftKings points per race. So I still Yeah, I like Ty Dillon as a pivot off of McDowell. I still like McDowell overall. I'll have relatively low ownership of Ty Dillon, who starts 24th on Sunday. AJ Allmendinger starts 25th. I love the AJ Allmendinger play this week. This 47 team has performed really well lately. The last 4 Texas fall races, he's finished 16th, 17th, 17th, and 14th. And as far as the 2 most recent mile-and-a-half tracks this season, he finished 21st at Kansas, 14th at Vegas. And overall, as I said, Allmendinger, the 47 team has just ran well lately. The biggest question is going to be, how are you going to fit that $6,900 price tag into your lineup? It's going to take a little bit of creativity, but when you have lower price guys like McDowell, Chastain, even Corey LaJoie this week, we'll get to them in a little bit. I like the Allmendinger play. I like being overweight on him. I think he has the potential to finish top 15. Obviously his teammate Chris Buescher has good speed this weekend. There's no reason to think that Allmendinger won't either. So I do like the Allmendinger play. Austin Dillon, priced pretty high this week at $7,700, but he has top 15 potential. That 3 team has pretty much been a top 10 contender for the last 2.5 months, I'd say. Their qualifying is just not there, so they've been great play. Austin has ended up being a great play in DraftKings quite often recently. As far as Texas goes, Dillon finished 13th here last season. It's just going to depend on if that price tag is drifting up to very high for what you can expect out of a guy like Austin Dillon. So I do like being overweight. I think Austin is going to be pretty under-owned on Sunday. So I like being overweight on him, but I don't like going crazy. I like being at about that 15-20% range. Probably closer to 15, but I don't think Austin Dillon's a bad play. I just wish he was priced a little bit lower. David Ragan, starting 27th, priced at $6,400. I think he's too high priced for a limited upside. He has a 23.2 average finish on the mile-and-a-half tracks this year. If he ends up 23rd, that equals 22 DraftKings points. Not sure that works or fits into the winning lineup at $6,400. I don't mind the play, but I'm personally going to be low owned when it comes to David Ragan. Same with Regan Smith, priced way too high, $6,800. I don't know what they're thinking. Looking at the mile-and-a-halfs this year, I think Regan Smith did finish on 12th at Las Vegas 2 race. The Kansas 2 race, he ended up 28th after starting 26th. Not this weekend, I'm not seeing a huge amount of speed in that 95 car. Yeah, he starts 28th, but that's probably about where he's going to end up, assuming there's not a high attrition rate and a bunch of wrecks. But still, $6,800, I'd much rather have AJ Allmendinger there at $69 or Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So low ownership for me as far as Regan Smith this weekend. Just don't like it. Now to 29th, Michael McDowell. As I said, I really like Michael McDowell this weekend. He's going to be my highest owned low-dollar driver. I don't think I'm going to get crazy like I did the other week. I ended up like 60-something% of Corey LaJoie at Kansas when he had those mechanical issues. He was running top 30 at the time. I liked how it was working out, but I don't think I'll go that crazy with McDowell this weekend because there is value there in those mid-range guys, but I'm still going to have plenty of him. He has a 23.8 average finish on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. He's finished between 14th and 23rd in each of the last 4 Texas races, and he starts 29th. If he can pull off a top 20 finish, that'd be great, especially at that price tag. If he was one of my bargains coming into this weekend as far as DraftKings and my preview goes. So definitely recommend McDowell. I think he's going to be a cornerstone to quite a few lineups in DraftKings on Sunday. Bubba Wallace rounds out the top 30. He's priced at $6,000. You have to like his average finish of 23.8 on the mile-and-a-half this year, but you have to hate how this team is running right now. It seems like they're running into issues every single week. Bubba has only finished better than 23rd once since Bristol in August. I'd like him a lot more if he was under 6,000. As weird as that sounds, he's right on that edge. Still, Wallace has a decently high floor, but I do like some of these lower price guys better. It gets you more money to work with some of the guys up top. So for me, I'm going to be low owned on Bubba Wallace for Sunday. Not sure how the field will be on him. He didn't show a ton of speed in practice sessions on Saturday. 26th fastest in happy hour and 26th fastest in practice 2 as well. So I'm not loving the Bubba Wallace play this weekend. I'll have a little bit of him, but not much. Getting to outside the top 30, we got Matt Dibenedetto starting 31st. He tweeted, I think he tweeted, or it might have been an interview. I'm pretty sure he tweeted it, though, that the car was a lot better than where they qualified. Obviously, a lot of guys are just going to say that, but, with some of these underfunded teams, you really have to pay attention to what they say because they can be some of the most truthful in the garage. Another thing to like about Dibenedetto this week is that he's finished 16th and 25th in the last 2 Texas races. Plus, he has an average finish of 26.8 on the mile-and-a-half tracks this year. Looking recently at mile-and-a-half, Dibenedetto finished 23rd at Kansas and 24th at Las Vegas. So I like having plenty of Dibenedetto, whether that's pivoting off of Mcdowell and going with Dibenedetto or pairing them up and being able to afford those 2 or 3 of those high-priced guys. I like both McDowell and Benedetto. I'm going to have plenty of them this weekend. Getting back to more of these back markers here, we got Landon Castle starting 32nd. Starts way too high for me. Priced at $5,100. Probably won't finish where he starts, so I won't have any Landon Castle. Full fade there. Ross Chastain, he was another one of my bargains this week. If you paid attention to my Wednesday article, DraftKings did really well with the pricing this weekend, but they missed on guys like McDowell, Chastain, and Keselowski. Those were the glaring underpriced guys. But if you need to save money, Ross Chastain is actually pretty reliable. He has an average finish of 27.1 on the mile-and-a-half tracks this year, averaging 20.2 DraftKings points per race. Obviously, not the highest amount, but still, you're only paying $4,800 for him this weekend. He starts 33rd, typically finishes right there around 28th. And as far as a back marker car, these guys starting 32nd or worse, Chastain's probably the most reliable. So I like Chastain. We'll see how it all plays out as far as my ownership percentage of him. I'll probably limit myself to about 15 to 20%. If he fits in, it could be lower than that, but I'll cap myself out there at 20%. Don't mind Chastain this weekend. Parker Kligerman, priced too high. Yaley, priced too high. Weatherman, not reliable. Those guys start 34th through 36th. What's interesting here is 37th with Corey LaJoie. He almost made my list, actually, of the underpriced guys this weekend. As I said before, I was way overweight on him at Kansas. And I honestly thought it was going to work out. It looked like it was working out until he had that mechanical issue. He was running top 30. Thing about this 72 car, don't look just at the last race or the most recent race at a mile-and-a-half track. This 72 car is averaging 23.1 DraftKings points per race on mile-and-a-half tracks this year. That's 20th best of all. You can't say drivers because LaJoie and Witt have split, but the car itself is 20th best. So I don't hate that punt play of Corey LaJoie starting 37th this week. Chances are he should run these back markers at least. I'm looking at a worse finish of LaJoie of about 32nd. Probably cap him off there at about a 28th place finish. At $4,700, that's a decent value, especially when you're trying to fit in Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch in the same lineup. So I don't mind being overweight on LaJoie. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to be at that 60% ownership as I was at Kansas, but you never know. No, I don't think I can. So that pretty much wraps it up. The last 3 qualifiers: Reed Sorenson, Joey Gase, David Starr, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were lapped on lap 5. That's how bad those cars are. But that wraps it up for Texas. one thing to note with this video and the post that goes on fantasyracingonline.net, I am going to add a chart to it this week to kind of wrap up where I plan to be at as far as each driver goes, whether I'll be underweight to the field, overweight to the field, or kind of where I expect it, maybe some other notes. So if you like that, leave a comment, let me know. Any way I can improve in any way possible, just let me know, besides being right more often. But yeah, so kind of a later race tomorrow, Sunday, AAA Texas 500. Should be a good one, though. Good luck. Hopefully we can win some money. 2 races to go after that, Phoenix and Homestead. As usual, hit me up if you have any questions. I'll try my best to help. But keep in mind, I'm usually putting in lineups and stuff, especially like last week with that stupid freaking inspection same day. I put in my final lineup at like 30 seconds before lock. But yeah, any questions, let me know. Good luck. Hopefully we can all make some money this weekend, guys. See you.